If you are looking for ways to automate your sales team operation, this video is for you. I have 5 things that the top 1% sales teams are automating right now, plus a bonus. My name is Marek Stiskal, and I help B2B companies automate their sales process. And for every point, you can look at this high-level graph of the sales process that I have made, and each one of the points is then shown here, so it is clear which part it is. First one is lead intake. So by lead intake, I mean the first part of your process. This can be cold email, cold call, ads, maybe form on your website where you get traffic from your SEO. It doesn't matter, but there is a step where the lead comes in and you need to transfer it to your CRM. And this is a lot of the times done manually. And if you ask your salespeople, they would a lot of the time be rather doing something else because it's a lot of copying information. It's not really any value adding work being done here, so it's a prime candidate to be automated. And of course, it's not only about the enjoyability of the work, it's also about the data that gets missing, and you would like this to be done in 5 minutes, in 2 minutes, but a lot of the times it gets done maybe in the afternoon, maybe the other day, and this is not ideal, and this gets translated directly to worse sales KPIs and worse numbers, which is something that we want to avoid. So automating this has real business impact and is simple enough that it can be a good quick win for your first automation effort. That is why we always recommend starting with this. Not only is it the first step of the process of sales, so it makes sense logically, but it prepares the sales team for the incoming changes and shows them that there is something in it for them. Now on to the second point, which is a nurture sequence. Okay, this one you can see as the green rectangle on the diagram. And what this means? Well, if you sell any services where the leads that are coming in are not, let's say, warm enough, they don't have sufficient trust to purchase outright, you will typically want to send them into an emailing sequence where they basically stay there, they gather more information, and they over time build trust. You can see it as the leads coming in, going to the CRM, but then going to the nurture sequence. Then, when they are ready, coming back into the CRM, ready for the next steps. So, why should you do this? Well, you will get more from the same leads. The people that are coming in that would otherwise just go out here and tell you, we are not ready for it yet, or we need to think about it. They can be sent to this nurture sequence and then reactivated as customers in the future. And why you should automate it? You can send everyone to the same newsletter or other type of email sequence you might have, but what makes this very good candidate for automating is the ability to deliver personalized messages to everyone. Because everyone will have different stages they are in, and everyone will have different information they need, and you want to segment those people and send not really personalized message to everyone, but maybe segment them to 3 or 4 different groups and then send the sequence to them specifically so your efforts are effective. And the third point that I have there, the reducing errors and preventing the frame from breaking, is very important because maybe you remember a situation like this when you were thinking about purchasing a service, you were kind of gathering information, and there was something that was just slightly off and that prevented you from buying the service altogether. And this is a thing that we are trying to prevent because even a small detail can really lower the trust of the subject to the point that they will just drop off. They will never consider buying from you again. So that is why automating this nurture sequence is another thing that the top 1% sales teams do because there is just so much value locked in the people who would otherwise drop out of the leads that come in. So let's have a look at the next point. And number 3 is lead scoring and signals. This is something that is in 2 places here in the diagram. It is on the lead outflow and it is on the inflow from the nurture sequence. This can fulfill two main uses in your sales process. First one is to prioritize which of the new leads that are coming in are reached out to first, which will get the attention first, or which ones are just gonna go out without you spending any resources on them. And the second use is knowing which people from the nurture sequence are ready to buy or ready for the next step of the sequence. Because if you think about it, those people, they are here and they are getting some emails, and that's great. But what's next? How do you know that these people are ready to be reactivated again? Well, you use lead scoring, and there are many ways to do it. There are simple ones, there are very complex ones, but you are looking basically at two types of data. The first type is just demographic and what the company looks like. Just find the facts about what the company is, and then you prioritize based on that, which is in this area mainly for the first triage of the leads, so to say. But for the nurture sequence, you will also want to gather data about their activity. That means which emails have they opened? Did they engage with any of these links that you put in the emails? Did they visit your website in the meantime? Did they click on anything? Or how much time did they spend on the website? These are all things that you need to watch, and you need to score them, and you need to keep the total score for each lead. Then you just set the levels that signify that the lead is ready. And this is the way how you can reach to somebody who was just ready to proceed and get your services. Let's move to the next point, which is proposal generation. So this is a bit further in the process. You already talked to the future customer, let's hope, and you agreed that you will send them a proposal. And this is very different for each company. Some companies really don't spend too much time on the proposals, and some companies spend hours. You need to take a look at your process and see how much time are you and your salespeople spending on the proposals, and if the time is justified. Maybe you could just cut back and your close rate will stay the same. But the better option is to just automate the process. This way, you can keep the quality of the proposals the same, and you can cut back the time from hours to a few minutes. It is a matter of personalization versus speed and your process in your company. How complex is your service that you sell? For most of our clients, the service is pretty complex, so the proposal has to look the part. This usually means that there is too much time spent on making it. And this can be 100% automated if your CRM data is good and your salespeople are creating enough notes. And this is also something that can be automated to an extent. It's very popular to automate it nowadays because there's just not too much value that the person is adding by doing it manually. So another prime candidate lead intake is really number one you should do, and then maybe the proposal generation, and then move on to these two things that are a bit more complex. And now let's take a look at the fifth point, which is CRM work. This is something that no salesperson likes to do. Writing the notes, logging every call, every SMS, every email that goes out, transcribing the meetings they had with the customers, tagging and moving between the stages is just something that isn't adding value to them, but it's adding a lot of value to the organization. This, in a lot of organizations that we talk with, causes that the data they can get from the CRM is not very high quality. A lot of it is missing. There are some activities that are missing. There are some activities that are overdue, that are not logged, and it's quite a mess. And the problem with this is if you are a sales leader, VP of sales, or maybe director, there comes a time when you need to make a decision. But you then look in your CRM, you look at the dashboard, and you don't have any data to base your decision on. Or you have the data, but it's the wrong one. Stuff is missing, and this is even more dangerous than having no data because you might not know that half of your data is missing and you are making decisions on wrong assumptions. So the quality of data you have directly influences the success of you and your company. And if you watched my previous video about biggest mistakes that you can do when automating, one of the points there was a wrong architecture. And I talked about how you shouldn't really automate inside of the apps and you should have a central point. But this is one of the exceptions, or maybe it's the extension of the rule that there are some small jobs like, tagging, moving between stages, and all of that, that will start and finish in the app, in the CRM in this case. And, nowadays, a lot of the apps have their own automation capabilities, also very simple. But these simple jobs are the only types of jobs that I would say you can keep in the app itself. So you can keep this in the CRM, but not if there's an intermediate step between the stages. Then I would keep it in the center app that you use for automation. But definitely, CRM work is something that if you implement, your salespeople will definitely thank you, and you will see how your deal flow is suddenly much faster. The last point I have here is a bonus. Let's take a look. And it's knowledge-based assistant. So this is the first point, which is based on AI. I haven't really talked about it yet, but the previous points, the lead scoring and the proposal generation, maybe even the CRM work, can have some AI elements in it. But this knowledge-based assistant is really based on AI. Your organization has some rules, right? And in the sales process, especially if your service is complex and it is custom made, there might be a lot of questions, maybe a lot of exceptions to the rules, and this can take really a lot of your time as a sales leader to answer all of these questions from your salespeople. But if you have a knowledge-based assistant, then these questions can be answered almost instantly by asking this assistant. So this is just a chatbot in some interface, maybe in Slack, maybe even in the CRM itself, which is connected to a knowledge base or a wiki that has the rules of your sales process. Of course, you need to have those first. You need to write down some rules or best practices that you want to have. But once you have them, you can just connect them to the AI and it will answer any question based on these documents. And the good part is, if you worked with AI, you know that it can sometimes hallucinate and it can answer incorrectly, but this type of assistant is made specifically to answer only if the source material contains the answer to the question. And if it doesn't, then it just says, I don't know, you need to ask someone else. And this is great for improving speed of your work in your sales organization and your accuracy. You will never have to call the client and tell them that what one of your people promised them isn't actually true. You will never have to do this again. And it's a bonus because the previous 5 steps, scoring, the nurture sequence, the CRM automation, all of that should, in my opinion, be done first before you do this knowledge-based assistant. And this might sound cool. This might sound like you are using AI. Some people might even call this an AI agent. But however cool it seems, I would still start from the fundamentals, start from the basics, because these 5 automations will bring you tangible results and you'll see your numbers go up. You will just make more money if you implement those. This is nice, and maybe if you have a lot of questions and you don't have any time for work as a result of that, maybe you can prioritize this, but impact of this knowledge-based assistant is a bit more indirect. So this is it. We covered 5 plus 1 point that the top 1% of sales teams are automating right now. Lead intake, nurture sequence, lead scoring and signals, proposal generation, CRM work, and as a bonus, a knowledge-based assistant. And if you are in a position where you would like to implement some of these automations and some of these systems to improve how sales works in your organization, improve the numbers, and make more money, I have prepared an executive summary of the best thing to automate in a sales process. If you want to take a look, just click on the link in the description